I know. All right. Yeah, well, we're live again, people. If you saw my last stream, you're lucky because it's definitely coming down. Because I don't know, or maybe I don't even know if it needs. Was there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See. Okay, because like I think too, it's like the way Streamlabs works when people start like trying to share their screen, it like goes away. So it actually probably didn't show up at all, which is pretty legit. But yeah, we're disappeared now, but I'm fixing things. So if you're here in this stream, yeah, some crazy stuff went down basically. Yeah. I'm assuming it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're live, as far as I know. That's what I'm trying to. Okay.
No, I
the
wasn't
statements are
suggesting that
compatible, then I see
yeah.
fairly little evidence for an interpolation there.
Well, it's not an interpolation.
Right.
It's an rhetorical device. It's Socratic.
Okay.
So that again, that would take me down another rabbit hole. So just forget I shouldn't have said that. But what I should have done is talk about the. So what I was getting at a bit earlier was the way that these epistemological systems run and proceed. This is where the contradiction happens. Is with the opening of Romans 1:18 to 32. It begins with self-evident premises about God, observable in nature, that you discover for yourself.
Yeah.
You're the one sort of in charge of that. The reason that clashes with a revelatory epistemology that Paul talks about elsewhere, Galatians 1, for example, where Jesus is revealed to him by God, that's running the other way around. That's coming from God and revealed to Paul without any endeavor of discovery that he sets out on.
Yeah, that's
right?
just a pure gift, grace of God.
Those are two fundamentally different things. Is that making sense? Why those are two fundamentally different things? Yes? No?
I think I distracted him in the chat. Sorry.
Oh.
Is he an atheist or a Christian? What angle is he?
I'm a Christian. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, so
that's okay then. Craig's not gonna.
All right.
What?
You were going to attack him otherwise, Craig, weren't you? You were ready.
No.
I could tell.
No. I just wasn't sure if he was questioning. If he was trying to. I wasn't sure if he was questioning John's like theology or if he was trying to make an. I couldn't tell from how the conversation was going.
Yeah, I was just.
No, Erin's a Christian. I'm not going to attack her. Yet. I just imitate her. I do a very good imitation of her. Okay, continue. You may continue.
Okay.
I think you meant you're an atheist.
Yeah, I was confused.
I thought he was making a joke, but yeah.
Mrs. Doubtfire, right? The imitation of me sounds like Mrs. Doubtfire.
No, that's my Stephanie imitation.
Oh,
I
right.
just made it you. Does it sound like Mrs. Doubtfire? I don't think I've actually seen that movie. Is it good?
I haven't watched it since I was a kid.
Yeah, no, I wasn't.
I wouldn't put it in my top 10.
That was just my Stephanie imitation. That's the only female voice I do.
It's okay.
I just want to make sure I'm being clear. So, Morningstar, if you can tell me if I'm not being clear, because what I'm wanting to show is that these are two different epistemological approaches that you can't just hold together, and that's fine. They're working in fundamentally different ways, and they progress in fundamentally opposite ways as epistemological systems.
I don't agree, but I think I understand what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with me. I'm just making sure that I'm clear.
Most people don't agree with John, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So for me, it's kind of an either or, and I see that the stuff up front with in Romans 1:18-32 as being something, as doing something else theologically and rhetorically for Paul.
Right.
It's important.
Right.
It's an important text, but it's just doing something else. So
And we know
I
that
kind of
Romans
agree with him.
is very rhetorical.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And there have been whole commentaries written on it, and
Absolutely.
showing how it very much follows in the tradition of classical rhetorical writing.
Yep.
There's a lot of powerful speeches in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like in the process of fixing everything, so I don't know like where we're at right now. I think I'm back, but yeah, I don't know if we want to start anything. I don't know if Erin has anything she wants to bring up. I know we were kind of talking about something different. I don't know if you had something you wanted to say or not. It's if you don't, that's fine. I just
Some of this goes over my head, to be completely honest. Like John, I was watching your intro to Romans the other day, and I find myself often having to like stop and then be like, okay, I gotta wait until like I'm not distracted so I can try to like understand what you're saying. So yeah, yes, the question is, some people are not that smart because it is hard to grasp what some of the concepts are that you're talking about, but I find it interesting. And I don't know, I'm not very philosophically minded either. When I was listening earlier, when I was going to hop on it, you guys were talking about evangelism, and I was gonna, my only little tidbit I was gonna add was that my whole time as a Christian, I never actually like led anybody to Christ, other than I think I was part of the process for somebody, and it was because I answered I don't know, and she was like, you're the first person to say I don't know, because everybody seems so sure and everything, and she felt suspicious over that, and I had answered with some uncertainty, and she was like that, and that was one of the kind of notches on her way to becoming a Christian. But that's part of the conversation from earlier. I don't know.
yeah, that's for sure. I find like it's pretty easy to spot when people are being dishonest, or just like, and not even like dishonest in like a bad way, but just like saying things that they think they're supposed to say, like to.
Well, a lot of Christians will adopt a party line, even if they don't necessarily believe it themselves. Like I'm sure Aaron's church, from what I've heard or talking about it, you were sort of encouraged to not say I don't know, like to here's the answer, even if you're not really sure.
Yes,
you believe that.
Keep in mind though that like most of when you refer to my Christian life, you're
it's like four churches.
Your emphasis is on my childhood church, and I was a Christian for 13 years, or 13 to 14 years after leaving that denomination completely. So, but yeah, there's definitely like they were in the Pentecostal church that I grew up in. It was definitely encouraged to like have that confidence, and I could send you links to my family's churches right now, and you should like the sermons that they preach. Like it's still all about this absolute certainty, and it's interesting, that's for sure.
Well, but there are also people who don't like, even like the liberal churches carry that tradition to some degree, where you're sort of encouraged to not necessarily be dogmatic, but to fill in the gaps and adopt the party line. Even like I've never done that because I became a Christian really late. So if people ask me what I believe, I tell them what I believe, not what I think a Christian should answer in this situation. Sometimes they match, sometimes they don't. I'm not sure if that was clear what I just said, but
No, it was for sure. I think like, yeah, when you just say like tote the party line or whatever, yeah, it comes across very dishonest, and just nobody.
Well, all
wants
groups
to hear
do it,
that or whatever.
Yeah.
All
groups do it to some degree, but Christians kind of train you to do it a little more than most groups.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to compare that to like how Mormons talk, because like they're probably one of the like the denomination or group or religion. It doesn't matter where you define that, but they're taught from a very early age to like work on their their testimony and and to talk about it with a level of assurance. And when you talk to anybody who's like an ex-Mormon, that's the hardest thing for them to get past, was that like this level of assurance that they have. And it's way more intense than even what I would grow up with. Like,
yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, see, I wasn't raised Christian at all, so I didn't even realize that you are very much encouraged to be not necessarily tolerant, but really open-minded almost all the time, how I was raised. Like the exact opposite of, so a lot of the ways Christians automatically go, I don't automatically go. That's just something I've noticed. Probably true of Ethan too, I would guess.
Yeah,
I think I was kind of the black sheep at my church growing up. Like I often was chastised for not going along with the how other people were doing it, because I think
you were like, you got evidence for that? Like,
right.
No, but like,
you gotta be an atheist if you don't.
I was always considered a little bit rebellious because I refused to like be so pushy with it. And like even when I did missionary work, like I was constantly in the hot seat because I wasn't being like the way that it didn't take this personality on that they wanted me to. And
that's really interesting. Yeah,
and I
do see that.
I do think it's interesting that the one person that I actually did like help lead to it was because I did it the wrong way.
What?
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. It's not innate in you. You're not, as an atheist, you're not a particularly dogmatic atheist either. You're more like conversant, and you'll talk about whatever the subject is. That's how I see you.
I don't think my personality changed from the time I was a Christian to the time to now.
No.
I don't think anything changed as far as like how my personality. I think that some things I kind of suppressed a little bit more when I was a Christian, and some things I've let out a little bit more now. But genuinely, like my personality is pretty much the same.
Well, but you're pretty mellow in my book. Like you're not. There are some atheists and who, like, even when you're having conversations that don't necessarily revolve around their axe to grind, they'll come in with their axe to grind. There are Christians who do that too. You don't really do that at all, as far as I've seen. I don't see it. Ethan doesn't do it either. Ethan and you are kind of similar in that way.
Well, thank you.
Just my observation.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But sure.
I always have an axe to grind.
Yeah.
I was kind of rude to somebody today on Twitter because whatever.
Really? Well,
I
changed my mind then. I changed my mind.
I said something like stupidity is, because they called me stupid, and I said that stupidity is believing that Moses wrote the entire Bible.
Yeah, well, that's.
I felt pretty justified in that. I felt like that was pretty solid. I think earlier in my Twitter days, I had more intense back and forth, but I had a standard of like I never called anybody like an idiot or like had those atheist rhetoric of like you have a mental illness or anything like that. Like I've never been like that, and that's I would fight with an atheist if they came in with that attitude.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by podcasts like Real Atheology and various other platforms that kind of encourage like meaningful dialogue. I think that's really helpful in kind of getting the two sides talking.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, like
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's talk about myself some more.
Go for it.
I'm like John's biggest fan ever, because I'm like, hey, like I watch all of his stuff, and like I come from from the position of like I don't want to see people in harmful situations anymore. So like for me, I think my mission, I guess right now, it would be that like some family members of mine I think are in a harmful cult type version of Christianity, and I would love to be able to like I don't have no desire to like deconvert them, but I do have desire to maybe help them see that they're in a very harmful version of the religion. And so like I often do listen to John and Laura a lot, and I listen to because I think an ideal situation for me and my family is I would love to convert them to a different version of Christianity, even though I don't believe it.
Would they be open to like a more like wussy Christian than what they currently are? Or they?
It's not a wussy. I don't believe in what you just said either, but
Is it like fundamentalism?
I think that there's certain people in my family members that would, and others who I think I have no idea how far down the like rabbit hole in their cult they are, because they are involved in a cult at this point. And they're leaders in it, if I could say that even. So I'm not too hopeful about them, but like someone like my mom, who is really quite reasonable, and she and I have had some conversations, and even though I thought she was getting kind of sucked into that group because they live in the same the same house, my parents, they like own a house, but she's quite reasonable. I don't know about my dad. My dad's pretty far in right now, but I don't know.
Well, they would always be welcome into the fold of those of us who confess the wussy gospel.
Yeah,
I just
swear, Craig,
What's the wussy gospel?
I think it's the universalism stuff.
Or
Yeah.
anybody that's like not a fundamentalist, maybe is what Craig's getting at.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's just silly
Well,
stuff.
it's like John doesn't like the term progressive Christian, and I get why, because it implies like a whole. So wussy Christian, you know what it is? It's like, oh, Orange Man's very bad. God
You know
is
that-
love.
that's what Pine Creek says. Have you been listening to Pine Creek?
No, I gave him the term. We were taught. I brought it. I think I coined the term. We were on
Yeah,
Shannon's
interview.
stream like a year ago,
Oh,
and he said if he ever came back to Christianity, it would be like a Pete Enns type Christian. I'm like, yeah, you mean like a wussy Christian? And he started laughing. So that's where the term originated.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it was me.
He got it from you. Okay.
Yes, Pine Creek is sometimes sings on his show now. He got that from me too.
I mean, basically everything good starts with Craig's channel, but
That's pretty much true.
I don't know. My husband's also a universalist as well, so that's, I mean, like I'm very sympathetic to that viewpoint. So
Yeah, I just think there's a real danger in fundamentalism. That's what I would
Yeah.
definitely try and steer clear of.
for sure.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
for sure.
Like,
Well,
I
are they
look-
open to your husband, for example? Do they listen to him?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they don't even really know that I'm an atheist. So like they still listen to me, but we just avoid the topic completely at this point because they know enough that they know that I don't agree with the Pentecostal like the theology that I grew up with. Like there's been we haven't, I think I was about 22 when I said like, you cannot talk about the rapture in front of me because it was very triggering.
Oh.
So there's certain things that have been off limits for years, like 10 years before I kind of like stepped away from the faith completely. So some stuff's off limits completely. This whole virus stuff has brought a whole new dimension into it. So I feel like there is a bit of a door in there for me to talk to them because I can, first of all, talk to them about whether the pandemic is real, because that's one of the things that my uncle is like a,
Friends like that who
Yeah.
really think the entire thing's fake, and it's difficult.
well,
Because you can't just easily convince them of it.
no. And like that,
It's not going to be helpful talking to them, so you kind of just have to watch them.
and
Oh.
ultimately I care about my parents, I mean, more I guess than my uncle. Like they're my
Yeah.
parents, so I don't know if he's savable in this situation. Like they're out there telling people not to get the vaccine and that the pandemic's not real. They've preached the Illuminati from the pulpit last week or 2 weeks ago, so I don't know.
That's bad because I mean I personally know people who have died from the coronavirus. I don't see how you can say it's not real.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing there.
Yeah, I mean, my family has never been involved with anything like that, which I'm super thankful for. Oh, okay, he just moved, but yeah, my wife's family, there's some people like that or whatever that we've dealt with, and it's really hard. It's just like, sometimes it's just like every bit of anything you say, it's just like questioned or, you know, it's all conspiracy or this or that. There's a way to rationalize just about anything, or a way you can sort of rationalize it to yourself. But yeah, and I'm not supposed to be talking apparently because I typed the same thing as Shannon Q in the chat. But
What?
I've got a question for Christians here, which I think could be interesting. So it's a horrible gotcha question, and it will lead you to abandoning
Why
your
do you
faith,
believe in
so
fairy tales?
Yeah.
that is it. Yeah, no. I'm wondering. So for like me and Aaron, I think would both say that like our quality of life is better since leaving Christianity, and I think that we both say that we are better people now. for you guys, is God happier with our decision to leave the Christian faith and not think that Jesus is the Son of God, or is he less happy with our decision, even though we're saying that we're now better people and we experience a better quality of life as a result?
I would just say that, because I would hold that, everybody is made in the image of God. And I think, you're good people now because you're made in God's image. I don't know if I would correlate it to whether or not you're in the faith or not, because it seems like it's still you. So, yeah.
Do you think, but from God's, like, do you think God is happier with our decision or unhappier with our decision and would prefer we stayed in the faith and remained the people we were?
Well, I'm sure he would rather you stay in the faith, but grow in the faith. So that's a kind of a tricky question. I know for me personally, see, I grew up atheist, and I know since I've become a Christian, I've been like more involved in like, like really wanting to help people. It's kind of, I've grown from it personally. So I don't know that seems kind of subjective. I'm not so.
I think it's a really interesting question. Yeah, I can it's super interesting because I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be like, sure, any Christian could just kind of say like, well, it would be better if you were happy and still a Christian or whatever. But like, putting those things side by side like that, like comparing, I mean, I think
I'll like get my husband on one day to tell you that he likes me better now. I'm happier and I'm a better person now in like both the ways that I live kind of, and also in just my general well-being is better now, much better.
I think I probably would bite the bullet here, but not in a way that would preclude getting rid of a toxic way of practicing religion, which has probably caused the trouble in the first place. I'd hope for most people that there's a happy medium somewhere.
I didn't quite hear the first bit. Sorry, Morningstar. Sorry, Aaron.
I'd probably bite the bullet here, basically. Yeah.
I would say for yesterday I heard Nathan talking to Paul about some sort where this guy was in his church, this guy was mentoring him in this really weird way, and there's all this dark, like, toxic stuff. Like, I think definitely, you had to get away from that for sure. So the question is complicated. On some things and even with Aaron, on some things I agree with the choices you made. I just don't think it needed to end up in atheist land. Maybe there wasn't an option for you where you live. I'm not questioning that.
Well, and like part of my story goes is like I did try to find a happy medium. Like I spent that whole time during my deconstruction, I was trying to find a happy medium because I didn't want to leave, but I knew I needed to get away from the parts that were harming me. And by the time I deconstructed the harmful parts, I could no longer pick up the other parts because I had deconstructed to the point where I didn't believe the core tenets anymore. So for me, that there was no happy medium. Like I honestly don't feel like my deconstruction or deconversion was like a decision I made at any point. Like I was looking for a happy medium, and then I just found myself completely out. Like,
do you think it had anything to do with the way you were like brought into the faith and everything? Do you think that played a role in it, or? I
think that played a role in like, okay, so growing up in like a kind of more extremist church, and then. Like meeting other people from different denominations, I think the cognitive dissonance there caused me to look into it further eventually. But I can't say I wouldn't have, because of my kind of personality, maybe I can't say that I wouldn't have still questioned even if I'd been brought in at a more progressive level, because even like I said, I listen to a lot of people who are, I think, in less harmful versions of Christianity, and I'm much happier with the stuff that's being said, but I still can't. My skeptical nature still comes up.
You still can't do it.
No. I'm like, yeah, that's a way better way of looking at those verses. But then my head goes, yeah, okay, but like the textual criticism and like I don't even know who wrote that, and like those things come up. All the defeaters come up for me.
No, I think that's super interesting, and that's part of like why I like understand theology part of the way I do. Like, I think this is super relevant. Like, just you can't help the way you like think of things and like the way you were brought up and these like prior things that pop in your head, and like I'm not gonna say like biases like you're wrong or whatever, you know what I mean, but we all have biases or whatever you want to call them that pop into our head, and it's impossible to just like think of anything like completely neutrally and objectively, and it's just not the way we work as people. And I always think it's so interesting, like why do some people like are okay with a more like progressive version of Christianity? I don't even like whatever because it appeals to like, whatever. But like some people are more okay with that, and some people are like, nope, they lose one bit and it's just all out the window or whatever. And I just don't think like, I don't know, it's so hard, and that's why I think that like to just say like you're an atheist so you're like going to hell or whatever, like it just completely makes no sense to me, because there's like so much that plays into why you make the decision that you make or whatever. And it's just like, I think as far as like the question Nathan asked, I don't know if this really relates or not, but it's just like, would God wants us to live a good life for sure, and like, so I don't think there's really any like, I don't know, I don't think like you could say he's more happy with you if you were still a Christian, or more happy with you now or whatever that you have. I think that's, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I definitely like resonate with what you're saying a lot and stuff, and all these things you've brought up. If that,
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. And I was just thinking, I wonder if, like, say, you know, when you start out as, like, say, a strict fundamentalist, a young Earth creationist, or, you know, these like really strict views, I wonder if you're more likely to fall off than if, like, say, someone like me, I come into the faith and I go straight into like a biologos evolutionary creationism, and like a more, I don't want to say, because I don't think liberals are really significant
exactly
term,
like
but, you know,
progressive and liberal both like have these specific meanings or whatever that you're not
political
necessarily getting
context.
at.
Yeah.
But,
So
I
just
would
a more
say,
open approach.
I will say that I think you're right. I think that when you are, I think that the more fundamentalist you are, especially like with, yes, the more fundamentalist you are, and the more you're told in church that if evolution is true, then the Bible's false. Like if that gets
then
taught to you as a kid, it is like almost impossible to overcome. It is. So I mean, like Paul Gio's story is one of the examples for that. Like he was told that, and so it's impossible it was impossible for him to overcome that, because you're taught the strategies of how to deny every other version. Like that was part of my problem, because I grew up like in the Pentecostal church. I was given information on why all the other denominations were wrong. So when I tried to seek out a different version of it, like those biases did kick in quite a bit. So that was like maybe earlier on in my deconstruction.
I think it's possible to say that one thing is slightly worse than another, but still that both of them are bad. And that would go back to Nathan's question originally. We could say that disbelieving is slightly worse than a toxic belief, but in the end, both of these are bad things.
You think that disbelief is slightly worse than a toxic belief?
Possibly.
I don't necessarily know. Like, why? I think I one of the ways that I described it, let's take objectively Dan. Now, I'm not convinced of this. This is just a potential argument. Objectively Dan is one of the most, like, you can have honest conversations on his channel as a theist, and he promotes that type of dialogue. And I said on my channel, and I think this is probably true, that he's much more useful to us to us Christians who want to present the gospel correctly, as a honest actor atheist, than he was as a weak, uncommitted Christian who doesn't really, who isn't really down with the program and doesn't. I think he's more. I think it's if you're honest, like Erin is honest, and she goes through the process of like really examining the things she says. I think ultimately that's probably better for the Christians to have. I don't. That's how I see it. I'm not sure if that completely made sense, but that's how I see it.
Can I pick up on something that Ethan said? I'm going to spout off some wussy Christian theology here.
Yes.
And say that
I love it.
Yeah,
everybody gets.
I'm focused.
Fine.
I'm focused, John.
No, I think that because of the God that I confess revealed in Jesus, who is the one in whom all things hold together, and Jesus is present in all facets of life, among all different sorts of people, everybody. Jesus is present there, even when people don't respond to it. And I think that because of that, I can affirm quite strongly the work of God in Christ in both of your lives, Nathan and Aaron, even when you're not responding to it. That's really where I'm coming from. And I think that's a really central Christian affirmation of who Jesus is and how Jesus affects humanity. And because of that, I've noticed in my own life that hanging out with people who aren't Christians, they tend to be better people than a lot of the Christians that I hang out with. Yeah. They're people who are involved in a flourishing life that I think is very much in line with witnessing to Jesus, and even when they're not explicitly doing that, I think that's just going to happen. And I'm perfectly happy to affirm people stepping away from the faith as if our faith in God sort of was something that conditioned God into loving us and being happy with us, right? Our faith doesn't condition God into doing that. God's love and commitment to us it's unbreakable. It's unconditional. Okay. So I'm happy to affirm lives of flourishing outside of specifically responding to Christ through faith. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I'm wondering what you'd say, John, about like, I mean, obviously I'm not saying, well, as a pastor, you have direct access to God's consciousness, of course, but
of course, yeah.
Like for what are your sort of model of God, or what you'd say, like you know of God or think about God. Do you think that God is happier with like mine and Aaron's progression into who we are now from who we were, or is he angry or upset or whatever language you can use because we don't think the right thing about Jesus? I think it's drawing out that idea of like,
yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, again, part of what I push back on and theologically is always the sort of conditionality or contractualism that we tend to insert into Christianity, which is where if we do certain things, be it have faith, assent to faith, or do certain ethical things, right, then God's going to be happy with us. We're happier with us than if we didn't. I don't think that's the gospel. I don't think the gospel introduces those contracts and conditions into it at its basis. I think it's all about this unconditional love of God made real in Jesus. And so, yeah, I think God is happy with you. I really do. Even though you're stepping away from, or have stepped away from the faith, it's such a weird thing to say, I think, for a lot of Christians. But I think this is where we need to go, because if we don't kind of make that move, then we're making human sort of assent and activity the conditions upon which God's attitude changes toward us, right? And I just don't. That doesn't make any sense to me in my understanding of God and theology. So,
does it matter at all on your view, like what people think about Jesus or God? Like, I suppose you'd say, yeah.
Personally,
I suppose you'd. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, you're fine. You go. Yeah. Personally, I would say that I would like people to respond to Jesus and to affirm Christ's lordship. Of course, I would prefer that. But I'm not talking for God. I'm just saying I would prefer it because this is something that's been impactful on my life and has helped me flourish as a human being. And so I would hope that some people, if they would want to sort of come and see, as I was talking about earlier from John 1, yeah, of course. But I'm not in a position to say this is what you're doing is going to make God mad at you. And if you do something else, he's going to be happy with you, right? So yeah, I would prefer it, of course. That's why I proclaim and witness to Christ.
The Bible actually says, the Bible actually says, let every man be thoroughly convinced in his own mind. And if you're thoroughly convinced in your own mind and you're leaving no stone unturned, that's actually the right path. If you're doing it with integrity, that's the path to truth. So, it depends on the questioning. I don't think Erin had a choice to believe some of the stuff that she was told because she learned that some of it was false. So I don't think there was a choice there. So some of it, there may be a path of reconciliation for her. That's up to her. But some of this stuff, she had no choice. Like, that's where the atheists are right about that. She can't continue
what do
to
you
believe.
mean that? What do you mean that it's up to me though? Like, what do what?
Don't know. I don't know. Like,
But it's up to you.
What's up to me? What is it? I need to like.
It is,
like,
Erin.
Okay.
to live the rest of your life and decide, like, whatever you decide about whether God exists or not. How you pursue
I don't
the
think it's
question
a
from this day
decision.
forward.
I don't think it's a decision.
Yeah, I don't think
So
that's a
I get really,
agree.
I get hung up on that a lot when people are like, I got told this daily. Like it's on you, it's on you, it's on you, and I'm like, well, what? Okay, but tell me exactly what you think I should do. And often the things that I'm told, I'm like, I've done that. I've done that already. I grew up doing that, or like, oh, hang on, give me 5 minutes, I'll go do it right now. And nothing like that doesn't really. There's no practical kind of application there. Like it's just to me it sounds like a platitude just to be like it's on you now. I'm like,
right, but that's not what I meant.
Okay, tell me what you meant.
First of all, that wasn't the important part of what I said. The important part of what I said was that there are certain things that you were being taught to believe in that you patently found out were not true. The earth is, I don't know if you were raised young earth creationist, but the earth is not 6,000 years old. And I apologize to any young earth creationist, but you're wrong. You can't choose to go back and believe that again. So that's off the table. Evolution most likely looks like it is true. So that's off the table. You can't go back and choose to believe that again. But those are not, does God exist? The confusion always gets that I hear from a lot of people who are former fundamentalists is that they always conflate things that they're right about, perceptions that they were right about, their violent text, things in the Old Testament, with the ontology of whether God exists or not. Those are totally separate questions.
Yeah,
so how you pursue God exists is a totally different thing than Christianity, or this version of Christianity is true or false.
And
that's a different question.
And to that, which model of God? Because like I would say that this is,
but that's what I'm saying.
Like,
this
why
is up to you to
a lot of times it's I go by the label of agnostic because I'm very agnostic on a lot of different types of ways people conceptualize different God models. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this in a way that's like not atheist, like so, but then other ones, I feel like I can fairly say like I believe that
right.
that God does not exist.
True.
That
version of God, I get that.
So
I'm not,
the openness
totally
there, the openness there for me to believe in God is not. It's not like it's off the table. But
I'm not saying that it is. I didn't say that you were like dogmatic and closed off and hard to talk to about this stuff. I find you the opposite. So I'm not questioning where you are right now and saying you're doing anything dishonest. So
I just wanted to. I was just wanting further clarification on when you said it's up to me.
Right. I assume from what I know about you that you are gonna, like, when I suggest that you watch John Vervaeke because I think you'll get a lot out of it, I assume you might check that out. I also assume you might read the Tao. I also assume, just from what I know about you, I kind of assume that you're actually leaving here and do a lot of exploration that you think is honest, correct?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's the only thing that I'm asking. After that, I don't care what conclusion you come to. You come and tell me about it. And if you're telling me the truth according to you, I'll listen.
So at this point, my only bad decision would be to deny my natural sense of curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, I said the same thing about Nathan. Nathan does a couple of things that I like. He does these deep dives with this
Which
smarty
two
pants
things?
The deep dives with the smarty pants dude, I like. I approve of those. And you get a lot of really cool guests that are all over the place in terms of the things they believe, and that's how you have to pursue this stuff. Very open-ended and philosophical in the right sense of the word. I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I just don't know if I feel as comfortable saying like this is the way you need to go about doing these things like that, and like you better keep your curiosity like alive, or else Yeah, I don't know. That's almost what it sounded like. It's like, I don't know. I don't. Yeah.
It is interesting to me, like Craig, because like I've watched your videos and you've told me many times, or you've told the audience many times, like there's a process. Like if you gave me 2 weeks with me, I could show you this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Right.
step
Okay.
process.
Well,
And
you want to see me act. I can't. It's not a debate. I can't debate you about that. You can
no,
go
I know,
watch.
but I've watched
wait.
a lot of your videos,
there's
and
a
I'd
video.
like to know what is this elusive information, this step process that you
Well, I
seem to be
haven't
quite sure
fully
about.
put it online yet, but go
Okay.
watch my. I was starting to do that. If you want, I can make you my new. Go watch the Pleasure of Doubt videos because he put out a video. We were starting this process together.
I've watched a lot of these things. I've watched a lot of the
All right. Well,
the
that
guy
was the process.
the guy with the Hindu with the religious epistemology video and stuff. I've watched those things, and to me it comes to kind of sounds like a similar process in like what I was doing when I was meditating, and
It's
like
not that different.
yeah, and like to me it just seemed like a very another like step process of like achieving, you know, when some people call it enlightenment, other people call it other things, some people call it like ego death, or like there's these different things, and like a lot of them can come down to a process. Is it different than that, like the thing that you are going to teach me?
Yeah, I mean, you listen to the Ariuna one,
Mhm.
right? You listen to okay, so what I was trying to get at with the Ariuna thing is their process isn't all that different from mine. There's a lot of stuff about what they do that I'm like, okay, I get that and I get that. And there are similarities. I don't know, it's really hard to explain just off the cuff like this, but you know, if you want to do a stream on this and ask me questions or something,
Right.
go further with it. We could do that.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, sorry, it would kind of taken over here.
You're
No,
good. I do probably need to end this like fairly soon, not like right away
Okay.
or anything, but we can start
Can I-
wrapping up. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is sort of what I was talking about with the two approaches that we saw in Romans, where you have an approach that begins with you on a journey, finding these sort of self-evident truths about God and sort of making your way toward that. I think it's the other way around. So when I'm saying that God is involved with you now, and really with you, even if you're not responding to it, I think that for me theologically, that's what's really true about reality. It means that being drawn into the faith is not something that you get to do. This is God's work through the Holy Spirit, and I can't make that happen, and no process can make that happen for you. It's weird and it's really uncomfortable to be in that space, but I don't think there's any sort of solution that we can come up with to walk somebody sort of sequentially to believing in God. I just don't think that that's this has to come under the control of the Spirit and the Spirit's calling. And like, I know that I'm sure in the past you've felt the Spirit calling you and then realizing sort of that that's not what was happening, right? For you in your life. Yeah. And that's okay. Maybe it wasn't. And I believe you that it wasn't. But I still think that the dynamic works from God to us and not us sort of searching that out. So I do think that studying other religions and philosophy and all of that stuff is great. But I think ultimately the humbling thing, for me at least, is that it's not something that I get to control. Yeah.
You know, I think I agree, and this is something I've been thinking about while reading Augustine, that if Christianity is true, that's the only way it can work, that God gives people faith and then they find the reasons afterwards. Mm-hmm. But I guess my problem is, even if I am having experiences that are like that, you know, like you said, there could be false ones. Like, how can I tell the difference between an actual Holy Spirit experience and me just like being depressed and joining dots together and wanting to, you know, like make sense of out of the world and needing a little cry or something? Like, you know, I that is the difficulty. And I don't know, maybe you're going to say, well, it's a leap of faith or something. I have no idea, but I can't get past that point.
Yeah, I'm in the same place, Nathan.
It's great.
That's a defeater for me. Is I can't. There's no way for me to know.
What's the question? I don't really fully understand it.
Can I just respond quickly to the initial question? So it is impossible, I will admit, to verify God revealing God's self to you by some other measure of validation. That's why this is hard, because there's no sort of external. When we're talking about God and we're talking about something that comes under the control of God, we're tempted to step over and be like, oh, here's this other stuff that can validate it. This is how I know that this experience is right. That one is false. The terrifying thing I think of that the Christian claim of revelation brings is that this isn't something that we can judge outside of that revelation. It brings with it its own content and justification. You'll hear precepts talk about self-authenticating sort of starting points all the time. That's not what I'm doing in terms of, because they go to the scriptures and say, this is self-authenticating word of God, all of these words. But I am saying that Jesus is self-authenticating in a certain sense that we confess as Christians. So our response to that is confession and witness. Can we judge that by any other standard? No. And that's why it's difficult to even answer the question of whether or not we can know for sure that my revelation is true and the other one is not. Leap of faith is sort of what that's getting at with sort of Kierkegaard stuff, kind of. But it's also, even with Kierkegaard, it still is this terrifying and sometimes an insecure feeling being in that location. So that's what I would say about that is, I feel that difficulty of wanting to sort of judge a revelation against another one.
Right, because of the subjective nature of it.
Yeah.
And I think something I just throw out there, that's why it only makes sense with some sort of universalism for sure, because I think it all kind of comes down to too, the fact that our world is so messed up and people have made Christianity into such just terrible thing that some people don't want to be a part of, and it's fair, you look at these certain groups of Christians, you're I'm not gonna, even if I felt the Holy Spirit pushing me towards a church, and the only church that was near you was some church that just the other day was planning to all go to the Capitol or whatever with their Trump flags, or you know what I mean, you wouldn't join them. So it's just I see that, and I can't blame somebody for being no, that it must be false or whatever, because you can't authenticate it any other way. And I just think that's it's a really sad fact that when I hear that, it just seems sad to me that I don't know why I was able to make that leap or that step or whatever, and other people aren't, but it's I understand it, and I think I can definitely see that some people just can't or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem true, and for some reason for me it did seem true, and that's just I don't know really any other way to put it.
I guess the question would be, are you rational in holding to that belief? It'd be about I think the farthest you could go with it is if you're rational in holding to that, and I think you are.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I think philosophy kind of is this meant to break down bad thinking or whatever. It's more once, I don't know. I just don't think I'm not gonna use any argument to get there or not. And I don't know. I'm sure it's so tough not having know the right terms to use or whatever. That's where I know I struggle, because I'm trying to say something and I probably say something that I don't necessarily mean or whatever. But
I'm with you on that one, Ethan. Philosophy is so out of my comfort zone.
I would add
mostly
one thing.
just sorry, you go, John.
I would add just one thing real quick, and that's, I think that even though I'm confessing Jesus's sort of self-authenticating revelation as the truth, I think everyone does something like that at the basis of their thinking. There is some sort of assumption that people are sort of involved with. We're all kind of doing it in various ways. I'm just confessing that this is the truth that I'm starting from, right? We all have starting points for our processes of thinking that we have to just confess, I think.
Would you say that comes before like just things like, you know, like I exist in a world or whatever, or I'm able to like experience
my starting point, the Christian one?
Yeah, like do you think the idea that Jesus is God as like this or this feeling or impression of like God exists or whatever it is, would you say that comes before like things like there's, you know, a world that exists and I'm in it and I'm having a sense of experience?
So what we get in the text like Ephesians 1 about Jesus is that Jesus is electing a people from before the foundation of the world, right? So part of that, what's being revealed there is something about Jesus that exists before the creation of the world. So technically it is logically prior to the world that we see around us and affirming its existence, right? So technically it is prior from the Christian starting point. Yeah.
But from your, would you say like in your mind or your memory or whatever of how these things, how you've come to these conclusions, it's like that, like experientially, was it like, you know, I have this impression of God and then other things come on top, or was it like, well, there's a world and stuff, but now I have this impression of God, like from going to church or talking to people, praying, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was it's kind of a both and there. To kind of complicate it is that, yeah, of course, before responding to Christ, I assumed that the world was existing and that people were existing and that things existed and all of that. But when I did respond to Christ, part of that realization was also reworking my preconceived sort of starting point before responding to Christ. And then in the light of that, I can see, oh, Christ is actually the one starting things off from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
For sure. So that might be a good place to wrap up, I guess. I think we hit a decent stopping point. This was a super fun stream. And definitely everybody that's on here now and everybody that joined except for the bunch of fools that jumped in at some random time is definitely welcome on again.
Bunch of fools.
I have a PSA. Are you going to give us time to close out and say goodbye, or should I?
Go ahead.
Follow us on TikTok. Spartan and I are blowing up on TikTok. God. Aaron's on TikTok. Nathan started
TikTok. Anything yet?
I made a TikTok like 6 months ago or whatever, and he's telling me I'm blowing up now.
I don't know how to use
blowing
it.
Up.
I don't know how to use it either, John.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Pretty user-friendly, actually.
I've been trying to watch tutorials because like Autumn's been trying to get me on for like the last 6 months, and I'm like, I don't know technology. It's hard for me.
Isn't it like Chinese malware? That's what I thought.
No, that's a mythology from the Trump era, where they were trying to ban it.
It is fun though, but it's a time sucker if you got on TikTok.
I don't need.
It's fun. I started when the with the quarantine, and I just started as a lark, and then it got really addicting. Like when you first get into it, I was like, 15 seconds of video, that's got to be really pointless and stupid and boring. And then somehow like 3 hours go by.
So
like,
much dopamine just.
It's before we're not starting a whole nother conversation about TikTok.
Right.